Well, good morning. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXCX, the best talk in town. We're a growing station. We're now also on 102.3 FM. You can find us on Rumble, Truth Social, Twitter, and Facebook. Today, I have the pleasure of interviewing somebody that is running for a pretty important job. He is trying to replace Dianne Feinstein and make sure that Shifty Schiff, Adam Schiff, does not acquire the U.S. Senate position. There's only two in each state, and since it's such a large state, you represent a huge amount of people. It is my pleasure to introduce James Bradley. Welcome. You there, James? Can you hear me? Okay, I guess we've got some audio problems. I don't know what's going on with that. I believe that.
Yeah, we do.
Oh, there we go. Welcome. So, why are you doing this, James?
Save America. Can't sit idle. Those that sit idle are, in my view, is complicit in the crime. But I give them a little bit of leeway there because of the Stockholm syndrome on the heels of COVID. So a lot of them are still asleep, but they're being impacted daily, their whole life. So that's it. I'm here to save California, and as much as I can, America.
Well, that's a proud thing. Tell me a little bit about your family, just a little background.
Yeah, I'm originally from Rhode Island. I'm an East Coast guy. Grew up during the JFK Democrat days because everything's dyed in a little blue there. I one of 9 children. I'm number 6. So can you imagine?
So you got
always in the center.
You got some people skills. You had to get along with some people.
Oh yeah, I was the one always balancing the scales, if you want to call it that. But great mother. She passed away unfortunately about 5 years ago. My dad's still with us. He'll be turning 100 this coming month. So we have some great stock in our family, and we all love each other. And part of the reason why I'm fighting is for them as well as all my good friends and the nation in general. But yeah, I grew up on the East Coast. You can tell by my accent, I would imagine. But yeah, I got to venture away. Did a stint in the Coast Guard. That's where my military training. I'm one of the 3rd-generation veteran. Grandfather served World War One. My father was actually a hero in World War II. Finally recognized 75 years later. I served under Ronald Reagan in the United States Coast Guard, flying law enforcement search and rescue missions off the Panhandle of Florida.
Very cool. My grandpa served in the Coast. Well, one of them. One was a Marine, and the other was on the Coast Guard off the California coast during World War II. So
that was quite an effort. Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you for serving, and thank your family for serving. I don't think we hear that enough. We've kind of forgotten that there are actual people that are stepping up. You give up a lot of your rights. You don't have the same set of rights that an average citizen does when you go in the military, but you do it to protect all the rest of our rights. So thank you.
Yeah, I do it with great honor and respect for those that served before, including my father. So it's actually part of our genome, to be honest. That those that served, we're kind of a different stock. We believe in the oath that we swear to, and that's something that you carry till you pass. So I can't be anything different other than what I am, and I embrace it with open arms, and I applaud those that served as well, and the family members that support those that have served. So that's what it's all about here: is standing proud, strong, never take a knee. Because that American flag means something. There's a lot of blood that was sacrificed to make sure that flag would remain free and flag would wave freely for all those that believe and that have taken the great sacrifice.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I'm it.
So, what do you think the role of government is?
Say again.
What is the role of government?
Well, honestly, it's depending on what level of government to govern those, but also the ultimate responsibility is to answer to the constituents so they can properly govern. In the Constitution, I'm actually an originalist constitutionalist. I believe in the framers of the Constitution put in the fabric of our country and identify the unalienable rights, and that's God-given rights. So the role of government is to, one, protect the Constitution, because they all swear an oath to do just that, as well as minimize government. As we've seen in this current administration, ones prior to that, they tend to want to overregulate, get into our lives. And currently, we're experiencing in Sacramento under Governor Newsom, is they want to get into our bedrooms. So that's what I view as the government, and depending on the department of government, they all have their own particular function and responsibility. But I'm really pushing more now than ever is minimalizing the effect the governments have, the overreach here in California, the nation, reduce that overreach by doing repeals. Once in office, I'll do a major push about reinstilling law enforcement, the rule of law.
Okay. So you prefer local when possible, local control when possible.
Absolutely.
Okay. What is the
It's
role
all
of
local.
yeah? What is the role of the Senate?
Senate is to oversee, as a representative of the state of California, or whatever state you represent, is to the constituent base, but we kind of deal with the appointment and selection, as well as the approval of the judicial system, or the judges in the federal court system. We also deal with international treaties. We could also introduce bills that will actually benefit the constituents we serve, and working hand in hand with Congress to pass those bills. Again, with minimal government involvement, the purse strings are controlled by the House. So that is, in essence, what we're going to be: the voice, representation in D.C. for the great state of California.
So you'd be one of 535 members, 100 in the Senate, 435 in the House. So that means that you have to have allies to get anything done.
That's correct.
Who would be your allies that are already there? You have some names to give us kind of an idea of where you stand.
Yeah, I did. Well, honestly, they're kind of in their own bubbles right now. They kind of focused in on their issues, but I did reach out to Rick Scott, uh, Josh Hawley. Those are the superstars of late.
Right.
Ted Cruz, I like Ted Cruz on certain policies, but I have not made a reach out to him as of yet. But there's a lot of concerns around Ted's platform. Um, of course, McConnell, I certainly think he needs to retire now. He's just not representative of the entirety of the Senate currently. He tends to run a little bit, let's say, rhino side. That's what the term that you're using currently.
That would be fair.
So I have
yeah.
a few I've reached out to. Yeah.
Well, the reason I bring that up is because who you choose as your allies tells you a lot about your character, who you hang out with as friends. And so I want people to understand kind of who you are. Now, we've talked a couple times before this interview, so I have some insight.
Yeah.
Where do you stand on the whole Trump Biden? Obviously, I don't think you're going for Biden, but probably Trump's the nominee.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Despite all the allegations and the legal battles that he's facing, I think he's becoming the modern day folk hero. And I think the populace is waking up to how feckless these lawsuits are. In fact, I've had quite a few progressive Democrats said, this is wrong what they're doing to Trump. And I said, well, yeah, finally. Yeah. So I think he'll definitely be the nominee without question. The question is going to be on his running mate for VP. I'm still having discussions with the Trump team through a good friend of mine to find out who that would be.
Well, my hope is either Tim Scott or Vivek Ramaswamy.
Vivek has been coming out strong, and some of his policies are really resonate with the American people. He, at his border, because we have a big border issue, as you know, here in California, and being part of that arm of government, DHS, when I was serving in the Coast Guard, I know what the real issues are. And open borders are not a good thing, as we all know what's happening. So I'm all on that. And I think Vivek, he came up with a great solution, bringing and activating those that are not deployed in military to man the border initially, so we can get the wall back up. But also, there's some other things we need to deal with across the border, and hopefully, the new administration that represents Mexico will be open to discussions about our intervention and helping them with the cartel issue. And
Well,
those that live in the border states as well as in other parts of the nation know the cartel is a big threat. I call them the largest terrorist organization in the world because they are. We need to deal with that.
well, it is scary that we had somebody from the Border Patrol that talked about how a huge number of our areas, because they define the border as areas, the cartels had operational control. You know,
They do.
of U.S. soil. Are you kidding me? Yet bumbling
Yeah.
Biden, Trader Joe, is saying that everything's under control, and Garland's right there willing to lie for him just as easily. It amazes me.
Yeah, that's Garland, but you got Mayorkas too. He's bought into it too. So you have that team.
Yeah.
We have the same issue with our rescue efforts in Afghanistan. We can cover that later. But yeah, we're seeing it here in California, predominantly in the northern part of the country, the state. We're looking at the hemp fields, the marijuana fields, basically controlled by the cartel. Where they have a big effect in the certain cosmopolitan centers, but Santa Ana, Los Angeles, in Silicon Valley area, very strong presence of the cartel there. So it's there. It's been around for some time. And I already have the kind of layering and how they all work together, their involvement with the current incumbents of the Union Party of the state of California. So it's coming, folks. I'm the candidate of law and order because I served under law enforcement, the Coast Guard, but I also seen what they've done during COVID in defunding the police. So we need to have that. Without law, we have no order. So that's part of my platform.
So you mentioned Law and Order several times. What would be your top? You want to go with three or top five issues?
Yeah, well, the border's number one. Let's be honest. It's affecting all of our daily lives. It's now here. And on that border issue, we're dealing with child sex trafficking. So I got a handle on that, working with some not NGOs dealing with the checks, putting checks and balances there, but also informing, empowering the constituents of what's happening in their zip code because it is at the zip code level. So information, empowerment, so they can identify pedophilia, the sex trafficking, and also the players that are part of the system. So border that deals with the drug fentanyl issue, deals with the human trafficking issue. That's number one. We have a homeless crisis. I've been on the street since 2020 working with the homeless veterans in Los Angeles. I've been working with a lot of NGOs. We have a really decent plan that we started activating. But while I'm waiting to get in office, and I say that optimistically, I think now's the time when we're running against Adam Schiff, we have the solutions. I'm ready to deploy the best solution or the ones that you can modify as you go to deal, clean the streets, get them in the proper care, because most of those on the street today in LA, I think we're up to 70,000 in the street,
Wow.
get them into proper. Yeah, it's pretty bad. It's pretty. I've never seen it this bad. But the proper help. Now, where they comply, that's going to require some law enforcement. So we have a lot of work ahead of us, but yet there's a plan, a comprehensive plan to deal with the homeless crisis. Number two, everyone's talking about the environment and the zero carbon footprint. I call it the green disaster, not the Green Deal. And Eric is part of this, by the way, good friend of ours. We come up with working with a technologist that was able to take biomass, use motor oil, and using their filtration and processing system to bring it to a zero carbon footprint. So the battery going electric, that's going to address that. The same technology we're using today, using this new fuel, zero carbon fuel, we're able to deal with that. So that's going to deal with a lot of those concerns, people having to spend 30, 60, whatever the amount is for a new electrical vehicle, and also the power grid too. So we have some plans in play, environmental, border issue, homeless crisis. Those are the top three right now for us in the state of California.
So if we're talking about border crisis, let's just start there. Um, you want a wall? Is that part of the equation?
Yeah, that's just one part of it, though. We need to have a tight channeling coming in initially. So continue the wall. That's very important for us to do. But also we have electronic surveillance. But we have to have also a great relationship, empowerment level with the Mexican government and the military. And right now it's a big mess, as you know. Cartel pretty much controls Mexico. But their elections are coming in 2024. I've been in discussions with those candidates, or at least the cabinet or the member, the um, the campaign team of those candidates. So we're starting that dialogue. Their biggest cry is this: we've sent over, how what are we up to now? Sending to Ukraine, 100 and some odd billion.
Right in that range.
We spent or sent for the border effort or law enforcement to Mexico, I think somewhere around 50 million. That's what I've heard.
So
Now,
million
look
as
at
opposed
that.
to billion.
Million as opposed to billion.
Yeah.
Our neighbors, the biggest threat to us as citizens of the U.S. Now, this affects not only us, but also Canada. That's the biggest terrorist threat to us. So we need to focus on that, refocus on that. And, there are a lot of many of the Mexicans that come over are fleeing that cartel stranglehold and decimating whole towns.
Right. They want an
Until we
opportunity.
address, so they want opportunity and safety. So until we address that issue, which we're not under Biden, especially under Newsom, we're going to have the same issue. It's only going to get worse.
Well, in the sanctuary state, we've made it so easy that you don't even need to become part of the melting pot.
Mm-hmm.
There are whole communities where you could never have to speak English if I can't speak to these potentially new Americans, and I'm talking about the ones that came across the right way. I don't have a lot of patience for people that broke our laws to enter this country. I might feel for them, but at the same time, you broke the law. I might understand why you did it. You broke the law. The people that came the right way, I have a lot of friends that came the right way through the government system, and it took them essentially 10 years to make it all the way to a U.S. citizen. Well, I feel like that's almost too difficult. In one case, I have some doctor friends from Peru. They moved as a couple. They agreed that they would locate in a rural area and start a practice, and they had to have that practice for a certain amount of years, and that they would get their citizenship. Yet it still cost them about $10,000 each, and it still cost them 10 years just to get their citizenship. Why would it need to be that difficult? They're coming and doing us a tremendous favor. Our system's
It,
broken.
it is. And that's why immigration reform is so critical. Yeah, we're going to tackle that as well. I work with a lot of immigration attorneys, and they feel the same way. Um, the fact that it's been kicked down the road for so many years now, decades, and not addressing the border, the immigration crisis, because it really is a humanitarian issue on the border now. And I respect those that waited in line, and I admire that. And of course, that's where my heart goes. However, we have a real serious issue. Many that made it through that are now part of integrated into our society, we have to address that issue, not issue, but that concern right away.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. You brought up a very good point. Who am I going to work with in Congress as well as Senate that believes the same as I or as we? Um, and that's going to be something I need to narrow down sooner versus later, because California is exactly the best example of what could go wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you're right, respectful of those that made it through the right way, but we're at a different time in history. We need to acknowledge those that have settled here for several years, maybe a decade, that didn't go through the official immigration status or process. But the reform of law to expedite, because really what they get caught in is the $10,000 in those that are profiting by delay of their application. There's no reason for that, especially with the technology in place and the vetting tools, because a lot of it is vetting. We can streamline the process as well as come up with an equitable way to get them in the system and naturalized. So they're here. We have to deal with it. We face, in many respects, we embrace it because we are the land of the free. They're
Mm-hmm.
fleeing their home country for the simple fact, as I stated earlier, for the conditions, the government conditions, well, cartels. So,
Well, right. I feel for them. I just, um, if you've been here and you've been a productive citizen for 10 years, I do think there should be a path to citizenship. But it's not an automatic, we're just going to say you're a citizen. I think that some hoops
Correct.
need to be jumped through for it to be fair. We're going to go ahead and
That's
take a
right.
break on that note. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXEX, the best talk in town. I want to say thank you to everybody that is on social media. You know, if you like what I'm doing, click the like button. If you have comments, I typically respond to comments. If you want to contact this candidate, when we come back, I'm going to have him give a little bit of his website information so you can find out more about him, see his website. Maybe you want to volunteer. That's possible. Let's go ahead and come back. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXEX, the best talk in town. Today I am talking to California U.S. Senate candidate James Bradley. He's hoping to replace Dianne Feinstein, and we desperately need to keep Adam Schiff out of office. Welcome. So we're going to jump over, because you said your next issue was homelessness. California's embraced the housing first model without dealing with issues. In other words, most of, or at least a large percentage of the homeless have either a mental health or a drug issue or both. If you just put them in housing without addressing other issues, I don't see housing first as useful. So how would you do things differently?
Well, obviously, but this is where caseworkers come in. Now, law enforcement has to back this because many of these cities are very loose on their laws, and they can still sleep, camp, live in public areas. You see that in LA currently. So that law enforcement arm, and we have to refund law enforcement, number one. Two, working in collaboration with the new comprehensive program, uh, detoxing. Well, if you got to look at homelessness as a whole cycle, because I look at things from a different lens, being in healthcare for over 30 years, but also a business entrepreneur. So if you look at the stem, what creates the homeless crisis, now we have laws that are very loose. We have ways for them to live on the street, the Obama phone, and they give us a certain monthly, and that perpetuates the continued issue of homelessness. And some of those that have been interviewed that are homeless, they say, "Hey, this is the best place in the world. We get the best climate.
Mm-hmm.
Always, I can go anywhere in the state of California, and they pay me $600 a month. I can't think of a better way." But that is the onset from out of the state. Then you have those that are being laid off, the divorces, that go into living in their cars, then giving up the car, living in with their in-laws or their family, and they're pushed on the street until they can recover. So fast forward to today with the fentanyl issue. That is one of the primary issues in the state in Los Angeles County. We need detox. So what I'm thinking is that we take some of those medical facilities and hospitals. We're going to repurpose them. And with that, we're going to have the right medical professionals to do stand down and detox. And that is just the first step. The next step is now the psychological component. I'm giving you the comprehensive plan.
Well,
So
not a problem.
those out there.
Look, this is a complex issue. It's worthy of more than a soundbite. We have.
Thank you.
So go ahead.
They go through detox. They go through the psychological component to get somewhat grounded with some good tools. Then we're going to reach out. In fact, this is where the labor unions come in: pipe fitters, longshore, and all the unions that are looking for apprentices. Get them part of the training. So at the completion of this whole process, they go through the detox. They're psychologically stable, and they have training to get into employment. That's the missing piece. And recidivism is another issue too. So we'll address that on the back end. But I think just on a kind of an overlay, that would be a good approach to start with. We have a lot of very friendly NGOs that are not receiving a dime from the state of California or the cities. We need to address that. That is the housing part, which that they also have their own plans. So, and the shameful things, especially in Los Angeles County, some of the nonprofits are taking that money from the state of the cities and they're paying themselves some really fat six-figure income salaries. So we need to address it across the board. Okay, housing first is not the answer. They get in, they get out. That's usually what happens.
Or they destroy the housing that's there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely believe that their issues have to be addressed, number one. And they're not all going to be the same for every person. Everybody has a different story. I would assume that probably it's easier with veterans simply because they went through a process where when they were in the military, they understand discipline. They might have fallen off because of circumstances or because of choices. I'm not going to say they're all innocent, but I would assume the potential is greater. And the fact that we're worried about sending money around the world, we're worried about essentially, from my perspective, funding World War III, meaning the absolute mess in Ukraine. But we don't have very much money to deal with a huge number of homeless that's growing in most states. Um, and I can't remember the percentage of homeless that are in California. Is it 30% of all homeless are in California?
Yeah, we're like the
We're the
1/3.
capital. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
And what was your third issue? Border,
Let's see.
homeless.
We talked about the energy crisis because the green green extremists, and you saw that happen in Maui. Just the root cause was climate crisis. That's what they're blaming this whole devastating fire on Maui, which is, to me, it's crazy what the left will do. Absolutely insane.
Well, don't let facts get in the way of anything. They have a narrative to push.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, it's very clear to those that can fog a mirror these days. I think it's people finally waking up to the fact that this whole narrative since Gore has been, people profiting off of this climate question. Um, so that was, renewable energies is one thing, but also new technology to advance. Taking the biomass, look at our issues with the forest up north. We have debris. They have years and years that haven't been cleared.
Well, and they did not allow natural fires in addition.
Exactly. So this is a way to use that material as biomass and using the process and the technology that we'll be introducing as usable fuel. And also because it converts down into clean water as well. So we address the water issue as well as the fuel issue. So that's one. The other one, but there's so many in the state of California, and that's only the three that I mentioned. So I've been very active. Those that don't know my name, that's because I've been active on the ground.
Well,
working with
yeah. Well, I met you at an election integrity event.
And there you go.
Yeah, because you're out going and doing things, not necessarily just on a podcast and flapping your gums, going, look at me. So I appreciate the fact that you're out in the field.
Yeah, that's what I've been noticing. Those that run for office spend more time on campaign trail and making promises never keeping. And I felt that would be not a good example. I needed to kind of set a new standard, I believe, for the selection of candidates. Look for those that are actually doing things. That could be an activism in Sacramento, which we're doing, fighting against the transgender narrative of protecting our parents and their children. So we have an active group there. Also on the ground, dealing with the homeless crisis. I spend my Fridays reaching out to the homeless here in Orange County now, and because I know they're not getting any help. There's a lot of great organizations out there trying to help, but man, it's not. It's the conversation you have with these folks, hearing the stories. They don't do that where I do. So it's about activation, and activism. So that's where I separate myself from the other ones because the crisis is happening now. It's not on hold. It's not going to wait till the 2024 election. So that's where you see the difference.
Well, I truly believe that if you want to change what's in front of you, you have to change yourself.
Yes.
Then you have to find like-minded and then you try to change your family, and you find like-minded individuals, and you try to change your community, and it all builds from there, one step at a time. So people need to be awakened. They need to be out, and even if it's as simple as you're talking about your values to your neighbors, people have shied away. Don't think of it as talking about politics and religion. Think of it as talking about your values. Magically, politics and religion will be mixed right in the middle of that, I'm certain.
Oh, clearly. Yeah, I think everything is political these days, even within the halls of faith. I've seen that quite a bit. We're trying to activate in the largest faith-based organization is the Catholic faith here in California.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been noticing the organization putting together what they call Catholic Vote to educate and inform. Also identify those that are really propagating the issues here as well as nationally. So that level of engagement I'm really encouraged by. And I'll be reaching out to the faith-based organizations as I get deeper into the campaign.
Well, they're not voting at the numbers that they're voting at embarrassing numbers.
Yeah,
Let's call 60% of people are registered to vote in California. These are rough numbers. And in a major election, then half of those people vote. And in a minor election, it's less than that. It's depressing.
it is.
How is it that
Well,
church is not saying, forget about party, how are they not saying these are our values given because we have, if it's Christian faith, 10 commandments, how do these not relate to issues? They got to at least do that much.
I agree. Well, yeah, I agree. I've seen it throughout the state of California, and it's not just the Christian. The Catholic is becoming more active in identifying those particular uh, incumbents that are basically the wolves in sheep's clothing. I think they're finally waking up to the point because it's affecting their whole the base, the congregation.
Yeah.
And what it's affected the most is the Catholic faith because those numbers are phenomenal. Um, but going back to, I think, main reason why people are so not into voting, they feel disenfranchised, and those that are leaving the state of California is the election issues in the state of California. And about activism. At the heels of the 2020 election, when I ran against Ted Lieu, I decided after that election, with getting numerous reports of my name not being on the ballot, them being blocked from entry into actually voting, and they had to vote via mail. All those issues came up, and I said I made a promise to the constituents: if I find any irregularities, I will prosecute to the letter of the law to clean up our elections, which we did.
Now,
So we formed.
is this the EIP California lawsuit? And you're one of
Yes,
you're one of
Yes, it
13?
is.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, I'm the one that started with the EIPCA. I'm the co-lead plaintiff.
Okay.
So I approached the EIPCA and said, "We have a problem here, Houston. What are we going to do?" And she said, "Well, we have the evidence." And I said, "Okay, let's go out and get an attorney. And with that, let's get some standing, bring on the other plaintiffs that were running for Congress or whatever office that have a story, have evidence, and they want to get to bring this legally and get this addressed." So right now we're technically still in process. So we went through the Superior Court, got lack of standing, which is always the standard. We went to the Court of Appeals, got a favorable ruling based upon lack of signature verification standards throughout the state of California. Went back to remanded back to the lower court. Same thing. They dismissed it based upon a few things, but we're now back into the appeal process, and we're going to take this to the Supreme Court because what they've done here in California is affecting every other state. The ballot harvesting, the mail-in ballots, lack of signature verification, the chain of custody issues. So it's a systemic issue throughout the nation. So that's why we've taken the lead. This should be one of the best lawsuits in wins for election integrity. But we didn't do it on election alone. We just looked at it this as being a civil rights constitutionalized lawsuit. Because that's truly what it is. It's disenfranchised, and it's actually taking our constituents so they don't want to vote ever again, based on whatever the reason is. Not voting in person, which it seems to be that's what they want to do, deploy in throughout the United States.
Right.
Is do everything through mail.
And no voter ID.
Yes.
No,
that's right.
No good reason for having a mail-in ballot, just you get one. Everybody gets mailed one, period. Yeah, I interviewed Ruth Weiss, who's the VP for EIP California, about this issue. And
yeah, she's very
it is
knowledgeable.
that's a sharp woman.
Yeah.
I would not want to be in an argument about election integrity because my hat would be handed to me.
Yeah, she's my go-to on certain laws that they're trying to bake into it. Right now, they're trying to push in Sacramento the because we had a very successful win in Shasta County about these supervisors voted out of the system, the Dominion system. They're going back to manual count initially. And what Gavin Newsom's doing, he's saying, well, we're going to try to create a bill that doesn't allow the county register of voters to make that decision any longer, which that falls under the purview of the authority. So it's funny. They're just trying to outmaneuver us on the election issue. So we're staying on top of it. You're going to see a big change here in the next 90 in up into the election. More and more counties are going the way Shasta County has gone, voting out those supervisors, getting in as supervisors that understand the issue of our election issues, and getting rid of the systems. That's just one. The technology is one of it. But, and I'm sure you had a level discussion with Ruth, which is amazing. Linda Payne,
I know Linda
amazing.
also. I just have never interviewed her.
They're quite a team.
Yes, they
Call
are.
my A team. Yeah.
It's concerning to me that California thinks that it's a good idea, and all of these bad ideas essentially they started in California. But 30 days to count. Well, France,
Yeah.
who has a population of I think it's 20 million, and I might be off on that number, but it's something close to that. They can vote in one day, and they know
We
what the
should.
results are. Yet in the place where lying Newsom, and this is me saying it, you can say whatever you want. I consider him to be absolutely a dishonest, evil man. Evil might be unfair, but his actions are definitely evil. He thinks it's a great idea that we have mail-in balloting, we have 30 days to vote, 30 days to count. What could go wrong? It's
Everything.
not like somebody wants to cheat.
Yeah, and they call us conspiracy theorists. But the reality is, if you're chinking the armor, any nefarious actor will go in and they'll breach it, and they will take advantage. Because we are fighting many opponents. I'll use that term, but those from the faith-based community, it's pure darkness.
Yeah.
So we just have to outthink, outmaneuver. We have a lot of plans, and we're actually acting on that plan. We have a great initiative going on in LA County. Those that don't know the electoral process, the counties that have the biggest effect on our elections are the largest counties, and LA being number one. So we have an initiative going there called the Precinct Project in LA, because they live it every day. And the greatest thing about this whole process of informing, educating, it's impacted the Latino community.
Yes, they're waking
They
up.
are, they're so fired up right now. They're saying, I can't believe I've been deceived. The Democrat Party is baked in lies that if they vote Democrat, and they most have been through those that are first generation that were immigrants, are almost like indentured servants, but I call them. Hey, come on over. We're going to take care of you, but they never do.
Well, they
So
keep
they,
them on the plantation, to quote Candace Owens.
yeah. Oh,
It's
yeah.
the same
Yes, it's
idea.
very,
You promise something, you're in complete control in a city for years and years and years and years, and yet nothing changes. We can find examples in major cities all across the United States where Democrats have been in total control. Crime went up, homelessness went up, cost of living went up, education got worse. It's just sad.
funny thing is, Robert Kennedy Jr.'s run, he's doing actually very well, being opposed by his own party. He's speaking reason. He's
Mm-hmm.
actually identifying those oligarchs as well as the bureaucrats within I call it deep state, calling them out, wanting to clear them up. And that applies here in California. And I keep saying, hey, you see DC, just look at California. Who's in office? Who's the head of the various departments? And, it's really a telltale story. But the sooner we clean up California and set a standard and precedence, election honesty, I'll call it that. Because that's really what we're looking for is honesty. Uh, and that becomes precedent in law, we can now start working across the nation using and deploying that law, enforcing the law. So addressing the issues here in the Latino communities, I love them. Half my family's Latino, by the way. Hey, I love them, everybody. I'm speaking for you. And like you said it earlier, they've been sold a lie. They're kept on the plantation. And that's not where you want to be. And I know you love your children. I know you believe firmly in pro-life, because truly that's what you believe, and that's what the Catholic faith and most faith teach you, the sanctity of life. But the Democrat Party has betrayed you. They've become something completely different from what you experienced when you first came over and where they are today. So they're finally waking up, which is a great, great sign. But my thing is this: without empowerment through education, then activation, so they feel they have some ownership in hope, you're literally pontificating the problems without solutions.
So you're just a
And
talking head without the other part of it. We're going to go ahead and take our last break. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXCX, the best talk in town. So when we come back, I love the fact that we're down to about 8.5 minutes and you started with hope, because when we come back, I want to hear about hope and solutions. As soon as we're done with the music, I'm going to hand it over to you and I want you to give your website. Okay, let's go ahead and come back. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXCX, the best talk in town. Today I am joined by James Bradley. He is running for U.S. Senate here in California, trying to take the Feinstein position. If people want to know more about you, how do they contact you?
They go to my website, bradleysenate.com. It's BRADLEY, senate.com. We're making some changes. We're going to update the site. So if you want to learn more, there's a phone number there. Just call that number. It's an 855 number. And also, you can actually call me. So I'll be speaking to you directly. Because I know right now is the time to not kind of cry over spilled milk or feel there's no way out of this chaos and this tyranny. I'm going to tell you the reasons as well as the path forward, because there is a path and there's more of us than there are of them. So bradleysenate.com is where you go.
So obviously you jumped in. You've got to be at least a masochist because politics is going to be painful. Nonetheless, you jumped in because you believe in this country. So why are you hopeful?
I'm hopeful because there's more of us now just finally waking up, and they are activating, which is a good sign for me. Whether you work with my campaign or someone else's, the fact is you're part of the process of change. And with that brings hope. I do it because, one, I'm not battle hardened, but I have really thick skin when it comes to politics. And, I was born in at an age where it was technically the Norman Rockwell painting with the family around the dinner table during the high holidays. And that's what I believe in: the family tradition, protecting family, protecting our flag, but also reporting to and answering to the God above. Those principles, those values have diminished over the last several decades. So that's what we're going to reinstill: give people hope, but also give them purpose. Because without those two, and also direction from the Lord above, you don't have a moral compass. And we've seen that happen in Hollywood, which is now permeating into Sacramento and throughout the nation.
For years, I volunteered at a boys' home. I'm not currently there. We had some disagreements over COVID policy and masking, and then they decided to vaccinate this young, healthy population, because they're all wards of the state, and I moved on. But it was a great time. Something as simple as going out and helping your neighbor and then talking to them about your values begins to shift the culture. Mm-hmm. Politics are downstream of that. Even if you're not willing to jump into the bigger fray, could you at least do that part, folks? We have all of these blessings in this nation, and you need to show thanks for that.
Yeah, it's really that. First, they were always concerned when it hits them privately, their job, their family, now what's happening in Sacramento about these gender affirming laws. And it's a very serious issue. I want everyone to understand that if this law passes up in Sacramento, they can remove your child from the home if you don't affirm their wishes to transition to another sex. And so this being pushing down into grade school in our public system is really wrong. And I think you don't have to go far to understand that and how it affects your life. Because once the government puts in laws, it's pretty much there to stay unless you have a strong leader to repeal those laws. And that will always be met in court for rejection. So the closer and the sooner you get involved, and you can simply reach out to me through my website, I'll get you engaged. This is throughout the 58 counties of California. And we have organizations ready to engage you so you feel not only is there a direction, but you're part of the change because this is happening now through every ethnic community. And I'm talking about Russians, the Persian community, and I call them Persian because those that from Iran, they'd like to be called Persian.
I have several friends.
The Indian community, powerful people. Latinos, you control the vote, folks. And I tell you, you can bring the change that you've been desperate for years. So reach out to me on my website and I'll get you to work.
Well, I appreciate that. On day one in the Senate, obviously, you're going to have to first kind of get your bearings. But at the point you're ready, so I guess not day one, but at the point you're ready, what would be your first piece of legislation?
That's a very good question. And the border is the biggest issue, as I mentioned earlier. We need to move forward in negotiations and discussions with the New Mexican government because their elections follow the same cycle. Sorry for the background noise. Doing a little bit of work here. So that's number one. We start engaging with them because their issues are so profound that affects us here. So that is it. I'm already actually in discussions with them. So we're going to have a plan in place. I'm going to approach Senate and hopefully get the authorization. The bill will be passed and then go down to the House for the approval because we need a budget. We need to divert funds away from the other countries, divert it into helping the border crisis, helping our neighbor to the south of us, give them the necessary tools, equipment, and resources to affect change dealing with the cartel issue. And that is the biggest issue as we're facing here throughout all of the Americas.
So reestablishing the rule of law on our own border.
That's correct, yes.
What would you do about the FBI? Just we're down to about 2 minutes. So can't really flesh this one out, but
yeah, it's a tough one.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I've worked and submitted information to Ray. It has to be Bill Ray. We have to clean that up in a big way. We already know that the terms used is black hats, white hats. That's a big issue for all of us, and Bobby Kennedy brought that up, as well as Donald Trump wanting to clean and just tear it down and build it up again. I think that has great merit to it because we have to the SES, which is the executive service that most of these cabinet positions are filled by cabinet, but the executive positions of the three-letter alphabet departments are using to fill, we need to address that as well.
So the CEO essentially picks their leadership, is what you're saying? Or the president picks the leadership? I think of the president kind of as a CEO. He's the executive.
It is, but the selection process for the staff positions in those various departments go through a selection process using the SES model. That needs to be revamped. Actually, that's how I got into politics. I was up for the chief of staff for the DHS, and when I was one of the finalists, but that process really informed me on how truly broken the system is. And as I went further advanced into politics, it became very clear to me there's a lot of nefarious operations behind it in the selection of those various leaders and chief of staff and that are in control of our bureaucrat.
We're down to about 30 seconds. Final thoughts.
Oh, okay. Plug. Go to the website, bradleysenate.com. Get activated. And if you have a nickel or two, go ahead and donate there too, because we need to put gas in the car to keep this mission moving. And I appreciate everyone listening, and God bless you all.
Well, I sure appreciate you spending this time with me, and I absolutely wish you the best of luck. Folks, here's another place where I hope I highlighted somebody that I believe in, and that's somebody that you can go out and become active with. You can help be part of the solution. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXCX, the best talk in town. All right. Well, I sure appreciate this time, and I'm sure we will be in touch in the future. You know, the door's open. So,
well, thanks, Eric. Appreciate it. And sorry, I was a little disheveled this morning. I was running on about 2 hours sleep.
oh well, you're wearing a button-up shirt. I'm just wearing my Constitutionalist for California shirt. I'm a little less formal than you are.
Yeah. Well, I've been working